Hello and welcome to the Expo Factor. In this episode, I'm joined by Anders Boulanger, CEO of Engageify, and one of the most engaging presenters you'll ever see on the trade show floor. We dive into the neuroscience of attention, how exhibitors can break through the noise, capture curiosity, and hold on to attendee focus in a world of constant distraction. Anders shares his engagement gap model, explains why curiosity is the most powerful state, and reveals how emotional triggers and shared experiences create moments that stick. Now, if you've ever wondered how to stop people scrolling their phones on the show floor and start meaningful conversations, this is the episode that you want to dive into. Let's say hello to Anders. Hello, Anders. Welcome to the Expo Factor. Great to have you on our podcast at last.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me on, Lee. I appreciate it.
All right. How's things over in Canada?
Things are pretty good. We're in our summers are only like June, July, and August. So we we really enjoy it while we can. So we've got some nice hot weather and we just had some thunderstorms and things rolling through, but there's no snow. So we really bask in the summer heat.
And have you been to any shows lately? I know August is usually quiet, but what have you been up to lately?
Yeah, I've had a bit of time off actually. So my last show was mid-June, and then we have different infotainers and engagement specialists that work with us that we've had working at other shows. But I've been kind of sitting at home, which has been good, spending time with the family. And then in September, I get back at it and go to Las Vegas for a security show.
Oh, fantastic. All right, great. Well, as always, with our guests, what we like to do is hear your story and how you ended up doing what you do and your journey so far. So tell us a bit more about how you got involved in the world of trade shows and a bit about your company Engageify and what inspired you to set it up.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking, Lee. So going way back, when I was 5 years old, I got a Fisher-Price magic set for Christmas. And so I started getting into magic, more and more books and magic sets. And I started doing birthday parties when I was about 12 or 13. And I was doing that magic. I love performing. And then in university, I remember reading a book by a man named Joel Bauer about doing trade shows. And then I got called to do an agricultural trade show and ended up running into one of his infotainers, who was a Mark Merchant, who was a ventriloquist. And I'm like, okay, this is a thing. And then I tried to do them, regularly, but it's in Canada. We don't have as big of shows and that sort of thing. And then this man, Joel Bauer, decided to hold a training one time. And so I went down to Los Angeles and got trained for 3 days with him and started changing kind of the way I looked at it, the way I did it. And then I started really getting some traction and started bringing on some technology clients, and I'd get seen at one show and then they'd, book me. And then if I was already busy, then I'd book someone else that I knew would do a good job. And that's kind of how I built my business. And so when I mentioned infotainer before, we are entertainers that convey information in an engaging and compelling manner, right? So it's really this spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. And especially in industries that are a little dry, a little technical, it creates that ability to capture attention and get that message across that company is trying to do in their marketing efforts. So that's really how it kind of just ballooned out of that. Originally, the company was called the Infotainers. And then during the pandemic, we had enough time and capacity. We weren't working as much to rebrand. And we really wanted to go towards this being an engagement company. So we created a bunch of different trainings, whether it's virtual engagement, vocal engagement, presentation trainings, and then of course booth staff trainings, which I know you're a big fan of and do on your own there at Expo Star. So that's kind of how the company kind of came about and kind of how we evolved to fill that space.
Yeah, I saw you on stage a very long time ago. I think it was at Exhibitor Live back in 2018. And I was just really, really impressed by the way that you actually hold people's attention and grab their attention in the first place, but actually hold their attention for 15 to 20 minutes sometimes. And that's the subject of today's podcast is, the neuroscience, grabbing attendees' attention. And what is it? How do you actually go about that, and what are the type of things that exhibitors are doing wrong?
Okay, for sure, man. Lee, as you were asking that question, I'm like, oh, I've got like a model and a concept over here, and I've got this one. Like, so I'm going to try to get my arms around this because that's a huge question, and
Yeah.
that's what I actually think
Yeah.
about a lot of the time. So, what is the mindset that they're in, the attendees? And I have
Yeah.
a thing I call the engagement gap, and it's kind of this: where
Yeah.
the attendees are at, and then where the exhibitors are at,
Yeah.
right? And the space
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
them is the engagement gap. And attendees come in, they are often overwhelmed because, well, if you've been to a trade show before, it's, a lot of sights and sounds. It's very overwhelming. But plus, you're going, let's say you're in Las Vegas for the first time, or just, you're just bombarded with marketing messages outside of the event, right? It's a lot. So there's just that kind of attack on the senses. Then there's sometimes we say overbooked, but you don't have a lot of time. You might have a schedule that you're trying to follow. You're trying to hit some different sessions, concurrent sessions. Maybe you're trying to keep up to work. Maybe you got things going on back home, with the family. You're on the road. There's a lot pulling on your attention and your time, right? And then the other so it's overwhelmed, overbooked, and then I talk about being overlooked, because that is really a symptom of where the exhibitors are at. Is even when you have a sincere interest in something, sometimes you just don't get the service, if you will, or the attention of the exhibitors to help you out. And so if we go over on the exhibitors side of things, what's happening there? Well, we know that a lot of companies don't train their people, so they're untrained. That piece. There's also a case where there's maybe unremarkable, in a sense that there is nothing about the booth to remark about. Like, there's nothing really being very that different about it. So there's those things, and sometimes they're uninspired or unmotivated to want to do something. They're just like putting in time. And so it's a bit of a perfect storm that I talk about, that engagement gap that exists, and we want to bridge that gap. And so when we start looking at what actually captures attention, well, if you really look evolutionarily, as cavemen, we wanted to get things to eat, and perhaps, the things we want, and then the things we don't want to die. Run away from the saber-toothed tiger, and, or whatever is chasing you, right? And survive. So when we look at those neurotransmitters, we got the dopamine, which is that reward, anticipation, something for me. That's why swag, like gifts, different giveaways, those work so well. And then the norepinephrine, which is the stress neurotransmitter. I mean, can be useful, and we can talk about some ways we do that, but typically we don't want to stress out our attendees, right? We don't want to go negative on it. So that dopamine spike, I know that gets thrown around a lot these days, but like social media is an example. We have a lot we're competing with for the attention of it. So how do we get past that preoccupation of being entranced, like you said, as they come in the entrance of the building, right? And all of the things happening. And so in NLP, which is much more common in the UK than the United States, they don't know about it as much, but there's a pattern interrupt, right? What is this thing that contrasts with the expectations so much that they go, whoa, what's this? And so we see a lot of, booth activations and things that have that novelty factor, have that dopamine spike, but what's missing often is the relevance. What is the tie-in that makes it clever, that gives that aha moment, right? Because we can all go crazy with trying to do something outlandish in the booth, but having that segue into the rest of the relevance and to the messaging and why we're there, that's the piece that separates a gimmick from something that is actually a process that is, on purpose, on point, on solution, and then that's it.
I'm glad you mentioned the segue, because very often when I go to exhibitions, I do feel, and even conferences, for example, when they have keynote speakers, it's a case of identifying what does this actually mean for the attendee and putting it into a context that they can actually understand. And you were talking about the engagement gap, and very often the challenge is always that the attendee is looking to learn something and the exhibitor wants to sell something. So there's a big gap in expectations. If you look at the three important elements of an attendee journey, one is obviously grabbing attention, and number two is arousing curiosity. Are those both interlinked?
I think so. And I think we can't do much until we grab attention, right? And I have a book coming out October 7th called Engage First, Capture Attention, Build Trust, and Drive Real Results. And it's really about this idea that before we can do anything, we have to capture attention, because otherwise it's going to fall on deaf ears and blind eyes, and just no one's going to remember it, right? But that curiosity, I'm glad you say that, because curiosity is the most powerful state to put someone in a sales environment. Because with curiosity, you're able to displace incumbents, right? They might be learning something that they didn't know, and they had a solution, but wait a second, tell me more about that, right? That's interesting, right? And so, to get people to learn, we need to create that curiosity first. So I think they very much are linked, and sometimes they might even happen at the same time, right? People can become curious about this thing that grabbed their attention. If I look at, how my trade show's set in terms of my infotainment performance is actually structured, I think about this all the time, but when you start breaking it down into pieces, every piece of it is there on purpose. And I have a system for building a crowd of people and engaging them, and then winning them over to taking a closer look. And that's kind of what our job is. And so I give someone a chance to win $2,000 in my presentation. So it's often $2,000 US, and I throw it down on the floor, and people will go, what's this guy doing? So that's that, like, what the hell is this kind of litmus test of a pattern interrupt? And I'm kneeling on the floor, talking about the cash, and then I don't even give eye contact to people really at this point, because I don't want them to feel singled out. So as people gather, there is, we can almost call it like buyer safety, but like the safety in numbers, that they're now becoming and assembling a crowd. And then I do something quite amazing in terms of magic, because it lots of times people would use this as a closer, but I use it as an opener. And it's kind of like, if he does that, what else comes next? What else is happening, right? And then what happens is I actually have kind of it's like a tarp kind of reflector thing, but I have people hang on, and they become the structure for my table. And so now they have purpose, they have use, they're becoming a team. I'm actually bonding them together. And before that, we've done a thing where I've made everyone fist bump each other. It's complete strangers now fist bumping. And so I'm kind of congealing the crowd and gelling them, really, is what's happening. And
you're building anticipation, right?
I'm building anticipation, and I still haven't even talked about the company yet. So it's all dopamine spikes. It's all, we're here to have some fun, here to be different. And people are hopefully liking me, liking what I'm doing, liking how they're feeling. And so we're anchoring these positive feelings to the booth, the brand, and the people. And eventually I stand up on a stage, and I talk about, I build rapport on the floor, and then I get on page on the stage. So when I'm on the stage is when I'll actually bring in the scripting of how we're going to talk about the messaging, the story of the company, what the benefits that they want to convey. And
let's talk about just while you're on there, talk about the importance of making people feel like humans and not just another number. Okay, because this one thing I think a lot of exhibitors actually get wrong when people are walking past. It's like, can I scan your badge? Or they get pitch slapped straight away without actually creating that human connection. And everything that you've done so far in terms of getting people involved with, as a crowd, making them feel safe and getting that interaction, what you're doing is making them feel comfortable and safe, and you're making them, more importantly, feel listened to, but also involved. So you're getting them to participate in an experience. And I think that's very, very important. And it's not about selling at this stage at all.
No,
do you agree?
No, and you're right. And it's in that rapport piece is that building. We need connection before conversion. And when we say conversion, is that
Yeah.
that might be the badge scan, might be the demo, might be the set up a meeting afterwards, right? The beginning of an overall conversion to buy. But yeah, that connection piece is so important. And, you know, how do we make it feel like it's not a canned presentation? Like it's, we're just going through the motions. You know, I use people's names. It's right on the badge, but I'm using them, and how they react, I will respond to. It's not like I can do the presentation without them, right? We don't want to have that kind of, and that's where I've seen some more formal, you know, in booth theater presentations of internal presenters fail, is that they've rehearsed it so much by themselves that they don't need an audience, and the audience can sense that they're not needed, right? But when we are there and it's really about co-creating an event, and that event doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's just we are here, you are here, I am here. You know, you didn't know you're going to stop, and now we're interacting and creating something special. And my intention is for them to have this as, you know, the best thing that happened to them that day, right? When they look back on the day, which is a great way to create a peak experience, so people remember being in the booth, talking with the people, all of that. So, but I think it's about staying present, really, right? You know, to create that connection.
Oh, absolutely. That is so important, because when you react to people's emotions in terms of how they're actually reacting, this is where you get the true connection, isn't it? Because they are feeling heard, okay? And the other thing that we talk about in the world of exhibitions is how do you actually personalize the journey and make the attendee feel that it's something personal to him and not just everybody else as well. And I think that's a very valid point that you make, is getting people to feel that it's a personal journey for them. And I think that's where, again, you get a lot more traction.
Yeah, and I think there's something special too about, I mean, each individual person having that journey, but I always want to have a crowd. Like we want to do as much as we can with as many, you know, and get the leverage, you know, to get that message out. But I do like it when it's just such a diverse crowd of people that assembles, and the mutual experience that is whatever you do in the booth, you know, they share that, and that makes it special, and that combination. So it's kind of like, well, choose your own adventure in a sense, but it does feel like it's for them, right? And that's how we want people to feel.
Absolutely.
Is welcomed and given special attention.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's just like going to a sports stadium, isn't it? If you all follow soccer or American football or anything like team support, that, you know, joint experience with other people is a lot more enjoyable than actually going through it on your own.
Yes.
So, and then the sense of energy that you get as well, and that gives you that boost, doesn't it? That dopamine boost, that because you've actually shared an experience with other people.
Yeah, and there's kind of another boost there. I'm trying to think of the what's the oxytocin. You're getting an oxytocin because of, you feel like you're part of something, right? You're getting that warm, fuzzy hug.
You have that belonging, right?
Yeah, belonging, the hug your mama kind of feel, right? Like that kind of
absolutely.
And so I always think about that too. When in your sports analogy is right on, but also think about a concert, when sometimes you're at a rock concert or whatever, and they shine the lights on the audience. They do this big and you look around, and everybody around is singing the same song and standing, and you just realize, hey, we're all here for this one thing, and it's just amazing, right? Like, how do we tap into that?
Absolutely.
Right? That's the kind of
absolutely yeah. I mean, we get that feeling. I mean, there are a couple of great examples. Back in May, for example, Bruce Springsteen was here in Manchester, and I'm such a big fan. That was probably my about 30th Bruce Springsteen concert.
Wow.
And the reason why you go to all these concerts is because you're chasing that feel-good factor, right? And this is something that Tony Robbins, again, being a fan of his as well, that's something that he really thrives on, is that sense of, you know, getting crowd to feel connected somehow with this performance. And I think there's something to be said for having shared experiences with a group of people.
Well, and I think what you just said there was so bang on as well with that key piece of having
Yeah.
people feel something. And
Yeah.
so when
Yeah.
we look at emotion being a key ingredient to an experience, and you look
Yeah.
at most booths, like
Yeah.
98% of booths, people won't feel anything, right?
Yeah.
And so if you
Yeah.
are someone who's going to be exhibiting at a show that is mission critical, and you're like, okay, what are we going to do? It's like, oh yeah, we got the brochures, we got the signage, we got, like, for most exhibitors, the only thing that will make people feel something might be compelling
Yeah.
graphics, right?
Yeah.
And after
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
how are you? So that's a great question for your listeners: is how are you going to
Yeah.
make the attendees walking by your booth feel something, and what is it that you
Yeah.
want them to feel?
Well, because there's only so much graphics can do, there's only so much video walls can do. But that emotional experience, I think, and again, exhibitors forget this, it's all down to how you actually engage them with them on a human to human level, right? So that means training your people to grab people's attention, ask the right questions, okay, connect on a personal level, and most importantly, listen as well, because that is a huge game changer. Where if you create something I saw at Cisco Live back in Amsterdam, was where exhibitors actually take listening as an experience. That is so powerful.
Tell me more about that, Lee. Listening as an experience. What did you see there?
Yeah, the Cisco development team, the SysDev team out of Cisco, they actually created an experience on the booth where they just wanted to actually listen to the users' experiences of their platform. So people walked in and they said they put 3 questions on the wall, and there was no selling, there's nothing like that. And they just said, we want to listen to you. What are we doing well? What features would you like to add to the development? What that could actually help you in your job? And a couple of other questions. And people just came in and they actually loved the experience because they could actually talk to the developers firsthand. They could share their experiences and actually feel heard. And they left with a feeling that the developers were doing everything in their power to actually support them in their job. Okay, so which is a great experience to have, to actually showcase what a company is doing in the background to make their users' life a lot better. And sometimes all you need to do is listen to what they actually found useful, what they actually want, what their frustrations are, and that is tapping into their emotions, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I think there's some, it's for existing users, obviously. So you kind of have that, you're kind
Yeah,
of talking to
yeah,
existing customers. But when you ask,
yeah,
what are we doing well? That's good for
yeah,
other people to hear, right? Like this, like,
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
and then what are we
absolutely, yeah,
not doing well, or where can we improve? It has a level of authenticity and transparency to
yeah,
it that people
yeah,
feel that they're not just, just it's all, rainbows and all of this nice stuff, right? Like
yeah,
that there is,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's believable and there's something to
yeah,
that. And so, yeah, you're making people feel heard, feel welcome. Like I've been in booths where people have some sort of technical issue, but it's mostly
yeah,
marketing people and some like sales engineers or something, but they're not there to really
yeah,
solve your problem, right? And
yeah,
that's
absolutely, yeah,
frustrating to them because they actually get
yeah,
face-to-face time. So that's an
yeah.
interesting approach. I like that.
Okay, so let's say, so we're at the curiosity stage. I think we sidetracked that for a minute. So you've built the curiosity, you've grabbed attention, you've aroused the curiosity. So what do you do after? What, from a neuroscience point of view, to keep hold of their attention and take them through that journey? What do you do next to actually keep hold of their attention and build that trust?
Sure, sure. Well, what I'll do is I'm going to share with you just an acronym we use in a lot of our trainings in terms of maintaining engagement, because it's one thing
Yeah,
to, stop them, but,
yeah,
as you start conveying the information, you're going to see people. I always like to do it at trade shows, like what percentage of the audience is on their phones? Like that's your, tune
yeah,
out, percentage, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so it's an acronym we use called SAVEU. So
yeah.
SAVEU. Okay. So and
Okay.
and 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 the
Save
first
you,
one,
yeah.
yeah, save
Okay.
you. So the first one is simplify. make things simple.
Okay.
And so often, like, our brain is 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our energy. So it's a real hog on resources. So whenever anything gets too complicated, we just go into cognitive overload, and we just we're done. We just tune out. And then we start looking at our phone or thinking about what we're going to eat at lunch and all that kind of stuff. So whenever we can, how can we bring things down to its essence, right? Just make it dead simple. Use a metaphor, use an acronym. Originally, my SAVEU acronym was longer. And I was like, I got to listen to my own advice here, right? So that's the first thing, simple. The A is authority. And the authority is about how you come across, right? And it's not just about your title, but if you are presenting in a way that is informative, that is a going concern, that is something that needs to be listened to, as opposed to someone who's up there lacking confidence, or they're nervous with their voice and they get really tight and now they're talking up here, and it's just people it doesn't feel like they need to listen, right? So when that authority is not there, and we could talk about authority a lot, but that's just another piece, okay? The V is the varying the senses, or VAK, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, making sure we're playing to the whole audience, right? So we're varying how we talk about things. So talk would be an auditory word, right? But if they can see your visuals and they can feel, something, right? And whether that's solid or it represents something that is, has some weight to it, right? Those would be kinesthetic terms.
Absolutely.
And then the E is emotion. We talked about that already.
Of course,
feeling something, which is that really that we're going to the right brain side of things, and where storytelling can really take a place. And storytelling's such an engagement hack, because you can not have other skills, but tell a good story, and people will pay attention. They'll remember it, right? So that's why it's so powerful.
Oh, absolutely,
And then the U is being you focused. And that's that relevance. That's that, is it going to benefit them, or are you talking about something that's going to harm them and they want to avoid? And so when you able to, you feel like you're losing that engagement, you're trying to bridge over that SAVEU in terms of you being that person to engage, that person to convey information, keeping those things in mind can help you maintain that engagement.
All right. All right. So you've done all that. And how do you actually leave them then, in terms of where is the end point? When do you know when it's time to let go of them? Maybe into another conversation with the rep of the company that you're working with, or if they're not qualified, to say goodbye and thank you for their time.
Yeah, I think it does depend on the company's objectives, what they want, how tight of a filter they want on their lead generation, right? Whether if they're a new company and everything's net new leads, then they just want to scan everybody, right? Depending on that quality, quantity, conversation, right? Typically in my presentations, I will do 2 to 3 qualifying questions. And because I've established rapport, I have everyone's attention, I can ask pretty overt questions of how many people are, a company doing over 5 million sales? Raise your hand. They will put their hands up for me. And I'm like, and meanwhile, the sales reps are watching this happen at the same time, right? And then I might ask another question or two. If you raise your hand to any one of those questions, you're going to want to go over to Bob there. Bob, wave your hand. Bob's got a special gift for you. And wants to share with you 5 minutes. Actually, I usually say 3 minutes. 3-minute 3-minute little presentation or demo or something. And sometimes I call it a save session. And they go, what's a save session? And it's just a way of framing that demo. And it's like, well, we're going to show you how to save time, save money, and save stress. How many people like the sounds of that? And so that's kind of, I make a case to take a closer look, to take a deeper dive. And if they've listened to what I've said, and I've laid out a strong argument, if you will, they will follow me over there, and I can drop them off, and then those people can be scanned. So if we go back to that engagement gap, which again, I have a lot of different things going on here, we're talking about it. We had that expanse, where the exhibitors are, where the attendees are. I look at the 3 bridge stones to get across that. Is we want to give them a reason to stop, which, a lot of trade show booth activations, that is the thing. We want to give them a reason to listen. And that's really that connection, that, the interactions with the booth staff, with whatever's happening. Let's connect with them so that they feel heard and they feel comfortable. And then the last one is give them a reason to buy. And that is where we're actually giving them a memorable message for them. And maybe it's not going to be right then, probably, unless you have something super transactional. But how can we be what makes you different, be remembered? And whether that's coming from the presentation, coming from your demos, from your people, from your brochure, whatever. Okay. So that's how we bridge that engagement gap, is those three bridge stones.
I get that. I think one of the things that you've mentioned about is the next step. What does the journey look like? And I think where, again, a lot of exhibitors get it wrong is that they don't actually define that process. And for me, having been in sales, for me, the way that I look at sales and engagement as well is just guide them along to the next step, whatever that may be, and sell the next step. Because it's bite-sized pieces, and like you said at the beginning, is to simplify things, okay? Because you don't want to be going in full in with a pitch, okay? What you want to be doing is incremental changes, right? So in terms of those emotions, in terms of changing viewpoints and things like that. So how important is it, for exhibitors to actually define each step? Maybe it starts before the event, and then look at during the event, and then look at after the event, and actually join the dots all together in terms of how everything will actually look.
I think it's incredibly important to have just step by step, just kind of clicking along. I have to say, I know with how you help your clients, Lee, it is much more holistic in terms of the before, during, and after. Typically, the way we help companies, create engagement at trade shows is just at the during. So I'm more of, an expert at that middle piece than the before and after. But when you look at those little steps, there's like micro agreements happening, right? That if we go back to the infotainment presentation, I'm just trying to get people to stop, and then they stopped. And then, you'll hear, if you ever see me perform, you'll be like, everyone take a couple steps in. I'm going to say that a bunch of times. But what happens, and if we're talking about neuroscience, we're talking about psychology, this is where I get really geek out on this stuff, is that a hypnotist will make some statements that we can all agree to. And then they'd say yes. And they start kind of getting this momentum, which is something that you'd hear in sales. You're getting people to say yes to something. Then what happens, and we're not doing this in a like a sales manipulative way, but this is just kind of how people can get on board easily, is that I ask them to do something and then they do it. And I ask them to do another thing. Everyone raise your hand if, and then they raise their hand. The more that they do what I ask them, the more I'm kind of building greater authority, right, in terms of a group leader. And so then I'm able to, take them to that next step. And one of the things my mentor ever said is never overwhelm your audience, and never ask them to do more than one thing. So if you give them options, that overwhelms them, it confuses them, and you just don't want that. If you confuse, you lose, right? So it's now we're all going to do this, follow me, right? And now we do that next thing. And so that, like you said, defining those steps and understanding the lead flow or the attendee flow of what's going to happen. Because often I will get to a booth and I'll go, well, where do you want me to put them? Right? Like they didn't think about that piece, or they didn't. And then it's like, we want to take them to the demo station over there. And it's the exact opposite side of the booth. Like, not just what is the next step, what is that path of least resistance, right? To really make it easy for those attendees to do that next thing. And then it becomes a no-brainer, So really smoothing things out, just like Amazon does with frictionless, one button checkout. Think about that.
Oh, absolutely. That's the thing, really, is that we on the show floor are competing with this device, right? So how do we, if people are scrolling, how are you going to grab attention? Okay, because that's in a live environment, people actually still have their devices with them. Okay, and it's that that fight between the cell phone and the booth.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a very important point that a lot of exhibitors are missing, because they're actually fighting not with the other exhibitors, but they're actually fighting with digital devices to grab people's attention.
And I think sometimes companies think I am competing with my competition in the industry, right?
Yeah.
But then they got to
Yeah.
go, well, I'm actually competing with every other booth in my area for
Yeah.
attention of the attendees, and then
Yeah.
fighting them for getting their head up and being lit up instead
Yeah.
of head down and shut down,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
different layers. And in my presentation, I have a lot of fun with people because sometimes I've got people like less than 2 feet away from me. Like I can touch them, you know, I'm
Yeah.
on my stage and they're on their phone and I'll be like, seriously, dude? Right? Like I'm right here. Like, what do you say? And I'll like hassle them in a fun way, right?
Yeah.
Tongue in cheek kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it becomes,
Yeah.
and I've had it
Yeah.
where the same person's on their phone again and again, and it becomes a running gag throughout the presentation.
Yeah.
And we're like,
Yeah.
and I can shake the person and I can do things that you normally would never do, but because of the context and the people get that it's for fun, right? And there's kind of an element of almost clowning in a sense that they know they're part of the show too, right? They're kind of on that side of things. But yeah, you're right. That phone is omnipresent. It's always around, you know, and it's so easy to look to it. And then we look at other things too, like Apple Watches and notifications and all these things that the exhibitors are also doing too, right? So we need to stay present on both sides of the aisle, if you will, the trade show aisle. But,
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, let's have a look at something again quite important, which is distance. Okay, in terms of safety. Okay, you know how you people get into people's safe zones. I mean, obviously in the US, it's different to here in the UK, where, you know, if you approach people and you get, you know, face to face with them, people feel threatened. And in the US, I mean, obviously it's a much more open society, and you can sometimes get into people's comfort zones. So, I mean, if you were a normal booth staffer, where would you say is the safe zone to engage with people?
Well, I think the aisle kind of helps you with a bit of distancing, right? Like typically, you're supposed to be in your booth when you engage. That is sometimes more enforced at some shows than others. Here's a little tip too for people: if you ever make your booth carpet the same as the aisle carpet, no one can really tell where your booth ends and where it begins. And so you can, but also people walk into your booth much more freely because they don't see that border, that line, and we eliminate that psychological barrier. So in terms of the distance, I mean, most aisles are about 10 feet wide. You know, sometimes you get the wider aisles, and those wider aisles can be tough. Like you can be on a main aisle and you're like, this is going to be awesome. But it's so wide. The people are just, they're past the point where they're going to be able to hear you and see you're talking to them, right? And I think intuitively people have a sense of a distance that they can take a shot, meaning like, you know, make an attempt kind of thing, right? And whether or not those people stop or not will be, you know, depending on your approach, depending on how open they are, or how much time they have, all of those things. But when we do close the distance, there is a distance where we get a little bit closer, and it's that social distance where people feel safe. And like you said, Lee, culturally, that's going to be different in different countries. And so, you know, you're going to have to adjust yourself to wherever you're exhibiting, if you're exhibiting internationally. But there is a place where people feel safe enough because they're not too close. And I think there's going evolutionarily, there is something there where we want to be able to see their arms and legs and everything and be able to run away in case they attack. You know, there's that kind of piece to it, which that's probably the you know, that social distance is probably what is used most in trade shows. And we're talking maybe that I'm going to say like, you know, like a 3-meter distance or so is kind of in that sweet spot kind of thing. But when people get even closer, you know, if you've earned that trust, if you've built connection, you can bridge into their personal space, which is reserved for friends and family. And we use a type of giveaway that is a puzzle or a magic trick that actually when I help people learn it, I can touch them with proper intention, with purpose. That's not uncomfortable. But now I get so close to people that we're connecting on a different level because we have closed that gap of the.
You're almost friends, right? You're
Yeah.
almost friends.
And so when you hand a business card over, you are bridging into personal space, right? We're getting close to them. So a lot of that swag, a lot of those gifts, when you break down the psychology of that, we are giving ourselves a reason to get closer to a person and furthering that potential relationship.
And I think this is where the connection to the follow-up process comes in, because one of the questions I always ask is, what is going to help the attendee pick up your phone call after the event? Okay, because how many times do exhibitors scan people's badges and then get on the telephone after the show, and the attendee has no memory of actually even visiting the booth, or they might say, well, I just came for the swag. Okay, thank you very much. But when you actually have that closer connection, and a good friend of mine, actually, I talked to him in an earlier podcast episode. He has the theory that one of the things that you should be doing in your conversation is basically ascertaining how far people actually lean in when you're talking, because that shows the level of their interest.
Sure. And I mean, I think there's a lot of body language associated with interest. One of the things we talk about, I did something on this at last Exhibitor Live, actually, which is about body language and fronting, right? When people give you they're square to you, they're showing that they want to engage with you, right? And so when you are facing each other, the feet are also a bit of a telltale sign. When people want to leave, and this is one of those things where you need to wrap things up, bring it to a close, scan the badge, give the gift. If their feet start turning away, but they're still facing you, they're trying to leave, right? So those are some things that are well, again, just signals for you whether or not they're eating it all up or they want to take their leave.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. And talking about picking the phone up, I mean, what are the clues that you look for, or what are the clues that you suggest the booth reps look for in distinguishing between somebody who's just interested on a general level and somebody who is very, very keen to learn more? They've been hooked, okay? Mm-hmm. They really want to learn more about the product, but how do you actually differentiate the follow-up process or setting up the follow-up process with those two different types of, I mean, in the industry, we talk about marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. So how do you actually, in terms from a neuroscience point of view, distinguish between the two?
One of the things that we see with the companies we work with is when we do a mass demo and I bring a crowd of people over, I'll talk about a 3-minute save session, but it's going to be longer than 3 minutes. But 3 minutes is like, that sounds consumable. And I'll go, you've already spent 20 minutes with me. What's another 3? Right? And I'll go, The people who start asking questions, the people who stay longer, they basically get qualified out in a sense, right? Like they want to learn more, right? And they want to go in a deeper dive. Now, those people who do demos have to be careful when people are asking questions and people are interested, that they don't just answer all their questions, because
of course
we got to make hay while the sun shines at a trade show. There's only so many hours, right? Average probably 21 hours over a 3-day show. What is the next step? And we want to seed that next step. Like, when we get together, we're going to have a lot more time to be able to go in depth into your issues, right? That kind of idea, so that we're future pacing what can be done. Now, one of the things that I've done, and we talk about this in some of our trainings, is the people who are really warm, I'll ask them, what is something that no one else would know that you're going to tell me that I'll put in the subject line so that you go, what? And you're going to remember exactly back to this moment. And often it's like a dog's name or something like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if we can somehow anchor in how they were feeling, what we recall, what we talked about, to the follow-up, I think that is very important, because we want to capture that magic. that we just had.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
my mentor used to do this thing where he and this is back before phones had cameras, but he would grab his camera and he would take selfies, and it's so easy to do
Yeah.
now with phones, take
Yeah,
selfies
of
with the
course. Yeah.
person with a big
Yeah.
smile on their face, and he would put that in the email. And
Yeah.
so it was this idea that when people are going back in their timeline to the moment that
Yeah.
that photo was taken, and then they get a little bit of that, how they felt in that moment. And now they're pretty darn receptive to whatever is going to be else in
Yeah.
the email. That's a lot to
Absolutely.
do,
Yeah.
but for the really hot
Yeah.
leads that you want to
Yeah.
make sure are coming through those SQLs,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a possibility.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that, because what you're doing is, like you say, is you're recreating that emotional energy that they actually felt on the booth. So again, they're going to be much more amenable to receiving that video call or telephone call to continue the conversation. So that's brilliant. So let's talk about the future then. Do you see technology as a hindrance or a complement to human engagement? Is it something
Mm.
that is helping us or hindering us?
I might say there's a little bit of both, right? Like
Right. Okay.
in my book, I talk about the state of engagement and how technology is making us lazy, not learn certain
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah.
Generationally, there's differences. I've seen this a few times where sales development reps, they're so busy sending emails that they actually can't speak about the product with their mouth, right? Like, and
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm doing it because I rehearsed and practiced and I'm ready to do that, right? And I'm going like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Like, so that can be on that hindrance side of things, that we're just a
Yeah.
little too reliant and we're not
Yeah.
practicing
Yeah.
these skills that are old and just, the people to people stuff, right? Face to face.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But there are certain technologies, and one comes to mind is Backtrack, which is
Yeah.
this basically kind of and I know there's going to be some pushback in terms of privacy and different things, but it's recording your
Yeah.
conversation, and you go
Yeah.
back in time, and so it's a badge scanning, note taking device that when you
Yeah.
scan the badge, you say, oh, how long have we been taking? Oh, maybe 6 minutes. You hit 6, and now that conversation is attached to the lead. And I think there's
Yeah.
something nice about just having a conversation with someone and not having
Yeah.
to be head down on your phone typing away with your
Yeah.
thumbs,
No, yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
freed
Yeah.
you to be more present and just stay focused on that other person. So
Yeah.
I see it
Yeah.
as kind of, I'm not too sure. There's probably a scale, and it's probably leaning to one way or the other. For the most part, I'm a big fan of going back to the basics of of conversations, of just engaging with people and having a good time, and just like creating something special through the connections that we make.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's all down to human connection. I mean, I always say that you can have the best booth in the world, but if you don't have the right human to human interaction, you're not going to succeed at exhibitions. So, thank you for confirming that. Okay, I think we could actually talk forever about this subject, as we normally do where we meet. But yeah, tell us a bit more about, you mentioned your book that's coming out. What inspired you to write it, and when's it coming out, and where can we find it?
Yeah, well, you'll be able to find it on Amazon. This is usually the kind of,
Okay.
again, we're talking path of least resistance. It comes out October
Yeah.
7th. It is available on pre-order right now if people care to check it
Right.
out. So it's called Engage First. And what inspired me to write it was just, well, a few things. Just I got to an age where I kind of felt like, okay, I know this to be true, right? Like for the
Yeah.
longest time,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
kind of like, and then I had my business coach that I've been with for 10 years, Boyd, he's like, Anders, quit reading books and write one, damn it. This kind of like, so it was putting together a lot of the stuff we're talking about. And a lot of my experience comes out
Yeah.
of trade shows, but this book
Yeah.
actually is applicable for people who speak in front of a crowd, people who are leaders, people who are
Yeah.
managers. There's a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
of things that do translate across. And I was on a
Yeah.
podcast yesterday about customer experience managers. It was specifically for
Yeah.
that group, and there was
Yeah.
so many parallels. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been kind of fun, and it's been good to finally get it out because it
Fantastic.
took a while to birth it, if you will. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Well, I look forward to reading it. And the next time I see you, I'll bring it so that you can sign it firsthand.
Are you coming to Exhibitor Live?
Fingers crossed.
Okay, because I think I'm going to do like a little book signing of my own book in my own booth. So you can pick one up
Oh,
there.
really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Fantastic.
Good.
Thank you very much for your time. Where can our listeners find you?
You know what? Engageify's website is engageify.ai. So it's ENGAGIFY and .ai.
Yeah.
Not that we're artificial intelligence, but it's about authentic interactions. So that's what the AI
Okay.
is in our
Absolutely.
case.
Yeah.
And then on LinkedIn, and it's Anders Boulanger. Last name is or Anders ANDERS. Last name is BOULANGER, French for baker, as many of you in Europe.
Excellent as well. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anders. It was absolutely fantastic to talk to you. We'll see you on the trade show floor.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Lee. Appreciate it.
Cheers. And that was Anders Boulanger, reminding us that connection comes before conversion. I loved his practical insights on bridging the engagement gap and how exhibitors can use neuroscience to create memorable, human-first experiences on the show floor. For me, a few highlights to take away from today's conversation. Number one, engagement starts with a pattern interrupt. Grab the visitor's attention before anything else. Number two, curiosity isn't just nice to have, it's the most powerful sales state you can put someone in on the show floor. Number three, simplify to the senses and add emotion. And the SAVEU framework is a brilliant tool to hold attention. Number four, most importantly, people remember how you made them feel. Create those peak experiences and your follow-up becomes so much easier. If you'd like to learn more, check out Anders' new book, Engage First, October the 7th on Amazon. Get your pre-orders in. I certainly have. Thanks again for tuning in to the Expo Factor. Don't forget to subscribe to the series so that you don't miss the next conversation on what makes the difference between a good show and a brilliant one. Until the next episode, keep connecting.